There's a kind of discipline so absolute that it unsettles people just to witness it. Not loud discipline, not motivational discipline, not the kind that relies on hype, music, or adrenaline. This discipline is quiet, mechanical, relentless, the kind that makes people whisper things like, "Something's wrong with him. That's not human. I could never live like that." And today, you're going to understand exactly why. Have you ever noticed how most people don't actually fail dramatically? They don't crash. They don't burn out in flames. They just fade. They start strong. They talk big. They post about it. And then, slowly, excuses creep in. Missed days turn into missed weeks. Missed weeks turn into abandoned goals. And eventually, they stop mentioning it altogether. But every once in a while, you meet someone different. Someone who doesn't break. They wake up at the same time every day. They train when they don't feel like it. They work when motivation is gone. They keep promises even when nobody is watching. And while everyone else quits around week 3, they just keep going. No drama, no announcements, no emotional struggle. They simply show up. And that's when people start to feel uncomfortable. Because deep down, everyone knows the truth. Consistency like that isn't normal. It isn't personality. It isn't genetics. And it definitely isn't motivation. It's something else. Something ancient. Hidden for centuries inside Japanese monasteries. Practiced quietly while the rest of the world chased shortcuts. A discipline so unforgiving that 99% of people fail the moment they encounter it. The monks call it a system that feeds itself. A discipline that doesn't rely on willpower, inspiration, or mood. Once it starts, it doesn't stop. But there's a reason this knowledge never spread widely. Because to adopt it, you must destroy something inside yourself. Not metaphorically, literally. And most people can't survive that loss. Before we go further, comment the habit you've tried to build and failed at the most. Not the one you're proud of. The one that keeps haunting you. Read every comment. Remember them. You'll understand why by the end. The story begins with a man named Raphael. On the surface, Raphael was everything people online claim to want. Software engineer, 6-figure income, modern apartment, flexible schedule, smart, educated, healthy. He had freedom most people dream of. And yet, every night at exactly 2 a.m., he lay awake staring at the ceiling, jaw clenched, heart heavy. Because Raphael had a secret. He couldn't follow through on anything. Not because he was lazy, not because he didn't care, but because something inside him always gave up. Gym routines never lasted past a few weeks. Meditation died after 7 days. Books were bought, barely opened, then abandoned. Language apps were downloaded. Streaks broken, notifications silenced. The pattern was cruelly predictable. Monday arrived with fire. He woke up early, energized, convinced this time was different. He imagined the future version of himself clearly. Disciplined, lean, focused, respected. By Wednesday, doubt crept in. Just today, he'd think, "I'll adjust tomorrow. One small compromise won't matter." By Friday, the habit was already dead. The alarm rang. His hand shut it off automatically. No emotion, no resistance, just surrender. Sunday came with promises. Monday would be different. This time he'd plan better. This time he'd be realistic. But Monday never changed. The cycle continued until his confidence quietly eroded. Raphael tried everything. Apps that tracked streaks but rewarded nothing real. Accountability partners who eventually stopped checking in. Reward systems that collapsed when milestones were missed. Motivational videos that worked for 2 days, then faded. He read every book you've read. He knew the terms. Dopamine, habit stacking, identity shifts. 2-minute rules. He understood the theory perfectly, but theory didn't save him, because the problem wasn't information. The problem was invisible. What Raphael didn't realize was that he wasn't weak. He was fighting the wrong enemy. Your brain doesn't exist to help you become better. It exists to keep you alive. And in its ancient logic, comfort equals survival. Stillness equals safety. Repetition equals control. Effort equals risk. Every time Raphael tried to wake earlier, train harder, or focus longer, his brain interpreted it as danger. Why waste energy? Why leave comfort? Why risk discomfort? His habits weren't flaws. They were defense systems. And willpower was never strong enough to override millions of years of evolutionary programming. This is why motivation always loses. This is why discipline based on emotion collapses. And this is why most people break. Eventually, Raphael realized something terrifying. If nothing changed, this would be his life forever. A man with potential who never used it. A man who knew better but did nothing. A man who talked about discipline but never embodied it. That realization hurt more than failure ever had. And that's when, exhausted and unable to sleep, he found something strange. A video, not flashy, not motivational, no music, just footage of Japanese Zen monks waking at 3:30 a.m. every day for over 800 years. Wars came, plagues passed, empires fell, the bell rang, they rose. No debate, no resistance, no identity crisis. Raphael stared at the screen, pulse steady, mind silent. And for the first time, a thought surfaced that terrified him. What if discipline wasn't about trying harder? What if it was about removing something instead? What if the monks weren't stronger than him? What if they were simply missing something he still had? In the next part, you will discover the exact psychological mechanism the monks used to eliminate internal resistance entirely, not manage it, not negotiate with it, erase it. And when you understand it, you'll know why most people can't survive this discipline. Raphael didn't sleep that night, not because he was inspired, not because he was motivated, but because something had unsettled him. The monks weren't impressive because they woke up early. Plenty of people wake up early and still fail. They were impressive because they never negotiated. No inner debate. No, just this once. No exceptions disguised as self-care. And that was the first crack in Raphael's worldview. Because every habit system he'd ever tried was built on one lie. That consistency comes from motivation. The monks prove the opposite. In Zen monasteries, Gwaji isn't treated like a habit. It's treated like gravity. Something you don't argue with. Something you don't feel like obeying. Something that simply is. Raphael learned that Gwaji translates loosely to a practice that continues because it has already begun. Not because it's enjoyable. Not because it's meaningful. But because stopping would feel stranger than continuing. That detail haunted him. Because in his life, stopping was always easier than continuing. The monks had inverted that equation. And to understand how, Raphael had to confront the most uncomfortable truth of all. He didn't lack discipline. He lacked identity death. In Zen training, the first thing broken isn't the body. It's the self. New monks don't arrive and immediately meditate for hours. They clean floors, wash dishes, repeat the same movements endlessly, not because cleaning matters, but because choice does, or rather, because choice is removed. In Gwaji, choice is the enemy. Raphael realized every habit he failed was built on daily decision-making. Should I wake up early today? Should I go to the gym or rest? Should I meditate now or later? Each question drained him. Each decision reopened negotiation. And every negotiation eventually collapsed. The monks solved this by eliminating the question entirely. The bell rings. You stand. Not because you want to, not because it's logical, but because that's what happens next. Raphael tested this idea with something small. He chose one action, waking up at 6 a.m., not 5 o'clock, not heroic, not impressive, but permanent. He made a rule, not a goal, not a challenge. A rule. If I am alive, I stand up at 6 a.m. No backup plan, no makeup days, no exception for weekends. The first morning was brutal. His brain screamed, "This is unnecessary. You're tired. You can start tomorrow." And for the first time, Raphael didn't argue back. He didn't motivate himself. He didn't reason. He stood up without responding. Something strange happened. The suffering ended faster than usual. Not because it was easier, but because there was no internal war. The next day, the resistance returned, but weaker. By day 5, the resistance was still there, but quieter. By day 10, waking up felt neutral. Not good, not bad, just done. This was Guaji's secret. Consistency doesn't come from force. It comes from removing the self that resists. Zen monks call this killing the small self, the voice that wants comfort, the voice that negotiates, the voice that demands reward. That voice must die, not violently, quietly, starved of attention. Raphael noticed something terrifying. The habits he failed before didn't fail slowly. They collapsed the moment he listened to that voice. The voice didn't want growth. It wanted stability. And stability, to the brain, meant sameness. Guoji replaces motivation with inevitability. You don't go to the gym because you feel strong. You go because it's Tuesday. You don't meditate because you feel calm. You meditate because the bell rang. Raphael applied this to his second habit. Reading. 1 page. Every day. No more. No less. Not 10 pages. Not 30. 1. His brain mocked him. This is pointless. This won't change anything. But Guoji doesn't care about outcomes. Only continuation. Within 3 weeks, something flipped. He started reading more without planning to, because once a system is alive, it grows naturally. This is why Guoji breaks 99% of people, because it offers no dopamine, no visible progress, no praise, no excitement, just repetition. And repetition is unbearable to the ego. Most people want transformation without disappearance. They want the results without killing the self that resists them. That's impossible. The monks understood something modern self-help ignores. Discipline isn't about becoming someone new. It's about removing the version of you that keeps interfering. Raphael stopped tracking streaks, stopped rewarding himself, stopped telling people what he was doing. Because Guoji dies when it's observed. It thrives in silence. After 90 days, the change was undeniable. Not dramatic, not cinematic, but terrifyingly stable. He woke up early without effort, read daily without thinking, meditated without resistance. And the scariest part? He no longer felt proud, because pride belongs to the ego, and the ego had begun to starve. This is the point most people quit, because success without emotion feels empty at first. But that emptiness is freedom. In the next part, you'll see the final stage of Guoji, the rule that makes it irreversible, and why once it locks in, going back feels harder than continuing. Before that, comment the one habit you failed more times than you can count. Not to promise anything, just to name it, and keep going. Raphael didn't change overnight. That's important. Because the discipline that breaks 99% of people doesn't announce itself with motivation or excitement. It arrives quietly, almost insultingly simple. The next morning, Raphael didn't wake up at 3:30 a.m. He didn't shave his head. He didn't meditate for hours. Instead, he did something that felt pointless. He woke up at the exact same time he usually failed at, 5 a.m., and performed the smallest possible version of the habit he kept breaking. No gym session. No full routine. No productivity montage. He stood up, he made his bed, and he sat down on the floor for exactly 60 seconds. Then he stopped. No reward. No reflection. No journaling about how he felt. Just 1 minute. Then he went on with his day. It felt stupid. Every self-help book he'd ever read screamed that this wasn't enough. That change required pushing harder. That growth lived outside the comfort zone. That he should maximize effort while motivation was present. But Guoji doesn't work like that. Guoji isn't about intensity. It's about identity erosion. Zen monks understood something modern psychology is only beginning to articulate. Your brain doesn't resist effort. It resists uncertainty. When you attempt a big habit, your brain asks dangerous questions. What if this costs too much energy? What if we fail again? What if this disrupts safety? But when the action is so small it feels beneath resistance, the brain doesn't fight. It shrugs. 1 minute isn't a threat. 1 minute doesn't change identity. 1 minute doesn't demand transformation. So the brain allows it. And here's the part that breaks people. Guoji demands consistency without escalation. Raphael wanted to do more. Badly. On day 3, he felt energy surge through him. The familiar high. The old pattern. This time is different. He wanted to meditate for 10 minutes. Then 20. Then add a workout. Then redesign his entire morning. But Guoji forbids this. Zen temples have a rule. When a ritual is established, you do not improve it. You do not optimize it. You do not expand it. You repeat exactly. Same action. Same time. Same duration. Why? Because growth attracts ego. And ego destroys systems. The moment you start asking, how can I do more? You reintroduce negotiation. And negotiation is where discipline dies. Raphael stayed with 1 minute. 7 days passed. Nothing magical happened. No surge of confidence. No identity shift. No viral montage of self-improvement. But something subtle changed. He stopped thinking about the habit. It didn't feel like a challenge anymore. It felt like brushing his teeth. Like locking the door before leaving. Like muscle memory. The habit stopped living in motivation and moved into automation. That's the real function of Guoji, to remove choice. Choice is the enemy. Every day you decide whether to act, you reopen the possibility of not acting. Zen monks eliminate this by designing rituals that do not require belief, desire, or emotional readiness. The bell rings. You stand up, not because you want to, not because you're inspired, because that's what happens when the bell rings. After 30 days, Raphael noticed something unsettling. He began adding behaviors unintentionally. After his 1 minute on the floor, he stayed seated a little longer, not by force, not by discipline. It just happened. Some mornings he stretched. Some mornings he breathed slowly. Some mornings he sat in silence. But he never decided to. This is critical. Guoji does not allow decision-based growth. Growth must be accidental. Because the moment your conscious mind claims ownership, the system collapses back into willpower. By day 60, the habit had grown to 10 minutes. Not once did Raphael miss a day. Not because he was strong, but because missing it felt wrong. Like skipping a step while walking downstairs. The habit wasn't something he did anymore. It was something that happened when the morning happened. That's when Raphael realized a truth that terrified him. The discipline he admired in others was intensity. It was submission. Submission to a structure so small, so boring, so repetitive that the ego couldn't attach to it. That's why 99% of people fail. They want discipline to feel powerful. They want it to feel meaningful. They want it to reflect their potential. Guji strips all of that away. No validation. No visible progress. No dramatic effort. Just repetition. And repetition doesn't care who you think you are. By the third month, the system began spreading. Raphael didn't decide to fix his sleep schedule. It corrected itself. He didn't force consistency at work. It emerged. He didn't push himself at the gym. He simply showed up. 1 minute had infected the rest of his life. Because once your brain accepts one non-negotiable ritual, it becomes easier to accept others. But here's the part people don't want to hear. Guji demands you kill something. Not laziness. Not weakness. It demands you kill the part of you that believes you are special. The part that wants transformation to match your ambition. The part that wants effort to feel heroic. The part that wants results fast enough to stay entertained. Zen monks understood this centuries ago. They weren't building habits. They were dismantling the self that needs to feel in control. And that's why their discipline lasts for centuries. If this is making you uncomfortable, good. That means you're seeing the edge of the system. Before we go further, comment below the habit you keep breaking over and over again. Not the one you want to be proud of, the one you're tired of lying to yourself about. Raphael didn't transform overnight. That's important. Because the biggest lie you've been sold about discipline is that it feels powerful, that it feels motivating, that one day you wake up and suddenly want to do the hard things. That never happened. What happened instead was much quieter, much darker, much more uncomfortable. 3 days into practicing Guji, Raphael hated it. Not because it was physically hard, not because it took too much time, but because it removed his favorite addiction, negotiation. Every morning before Guji, his mind used to wake up and ask questions. Do I really need to do this today? Can I push it back an hour? Would it matter if I skipped just once? Guji killed those questions completely. There was no decision, no motivation, no debate. At exactly 5 a.m., he got out of bed, not because he felt like it, but because that's what happens at 5 a.m. The first week felt empty, almost mechanical. No rush, no pride, no dopamine hit, just action. And that terrified him, because for the first time in his life, he couldn't rely on emotions to guide him. He couldn't wait to feel ready. He couldn't hype himself up with motivational videos. He couldn't reward himself. He just did the thing. That's when the real resistance appeared. Not loud resistance, silent resistance. The voice that says, "What's the point?" The feeling that nothing is happening. The boredom that makes you crave distraction. This is where 99% of people quit. Not because it's painful, but because it's dull. Your brain hates dull. Your brain wants drama, progress, feedback, results. Guji offers none of that up front. Zen monks understand something brutal. If your system needs encouragement, it will fail. If it needs rewards, it will collapse. If it needs belief, it will break. So Guji removes all of it. You don't do the habit to improve your life. You don't do it to feel better. You don't even do it to succeed. You do it because this is what is done. By week 3, something strange happened. Raphael noticed he wasn't tired in the mornings anymore. Not energized, just neutral. The resistance wasn't gone, but it was weaker because his brain stopped treating the habit as a threat. Remember, your brain only fights what feels optional. Once something becomes inevitable, the fight disappears. By week 6, the habit stopped feeling like a habit. It became part of his identity, not in a motivational quote way, but in a factual way, like brushing his teeth, like locking the door, like breathing. No pride, no excitement, no story, just reality. That's the part people don't want to hear. Guoji doesn't make you feel special. It makes you boringly consistent. And boring consistency beats intensity every single time. Months passed. The gym habit didn't die at week 2. Meditation didn't disappear after a bad day. Reading didn't depend on mood. Not because Raphael became stronger, but because the habit stopped asking permission. Here's the final truth Zen monks don't advertise. Guoji breaks your ego before it builds your discipline. Your ego wants credit. Your ego wants recognition. Your ego wants to feel exceptional. Guoji treats you like a cog in a machine. And that's why it works. Because discipline was never about becoming extraordinary. It was about becoming predictable. Predictable to yourself. If you want to try this, here's the rule. Just one. Pick one habit. One time. One place. Same time. Same action. Every day. No rewards. No tracking. No streaks. No making up for it. No skipping. Ever. If you miss a day, the system is dead. Not because you failed, but because you allowed negotiation back in. This is why 99% of people can't do it. Not because they're weak, but because they want discipline to feel good. Guoji doesn't care how you feel. And that's exactly why it changes everything. If this hit you, comment the one habit you'd apply this to. Not 10. Not someday. 1. And if you want more systems like this, ancient, uncomfortable, and brutally effective, subscribe now. Because motivation fades. Willpower lies. But systems don't care, and that's what makes them unstoppable.